Section from from Delhi yesterday, and he's again leaving back. So we would like to listen in your own words. We'll start with Dr. Thomas Schulze, sir. Please start.
I would like to, at one point, at one side, there's the leadership in my academic life. So what I have done, where I am. So I'm a professor at the University of Munich. I'm an adjunct professor at Hopkins and have a part-time professorship at Syracuse SUNY Upstate Medical University in New York. So in both worlds. In Munich, I'm an director of a small institute for psychiatric genetic research with a clinic for bipolar disorders, but it's mainly a research institute. And then I have this professional organization career. I was, for many years, president of the International Society of Psychiatric Genetics. It's a research society. And I also was president of the American Psychopathological Association at one point, also a research organization. And for a few years, I have been involved with the WPA for many years. I started out as the chair of the section of psychiatric genetics, and then was elected secretary for scientific sections for 6 years. I was in the executive committee, and then I ran for president-elect, and I was elected president-elect or vice president in 2023. And I will take office in 2020, next year, 2026, for 3 years. So I would like to distinguish these or differentiate these two things: leadership in a professional organization and leadership in your academic career. I think there are differences as to what leadership means there. I mean, the basic, I think the basic principles are the same, but there are different demands, different needs for these two things. And I basically would like to throw in a few buzzwords. I think for me, what has always been important is authenticity. So just, you have to be yourself. I mean, you cannot fake things that you aren't. Then you should lead by example. It's like a no-brainer, but actually sometimes it's not a no-brainer. It should be a no-brainer. And also, I totally avoid micromanagement. But again, here I think I would like to differentiate. So in my academic career, like leading a research group, then leading a small whatever department, and then a small institute, there I work with a multidisciplinary team: psychiatrists, psychologists, biologists, lab staff, lab specialists. So here, for me, it's very clear. I just have a larger vision, like an idea, what I want to do. And then I have specialists. I have people that know much more than me, my doctoral students, my whatever postdocs. And I just have an overall plan for the development of that group. And I totally avoid micromanaging. So my group, for instance, in Munich they're like me, not all of them are there physically. So they are also, I have members all over the world that have a 10% position here and there. So I totally avoid micromanagement. I want them to come up with their own plans, their own concepts, ideas. It's a little loud in here. Anyway, so and I know that they know much more than I. I just have so what should we do? We do genomic studies, proteomic, transcriptomic, methylomic. We have a clinical study. We have a clinical trial. And I just have to, keep track of the budget. I have to have this, what do I want? The overall roadmap for a year or two. And then I have my team and ask them, how would you like to go about it? And then I'm the guy who just tries to manage it. And the last point is then at one point the buck stops with you. So when at one point in that part of leadership, in that leadership area, I think that at one point there are decisions somebody has to take. Like, are we going this way or are we going that way? And then you have to ponder, you have to weigh the arguments. And at one point they look at you and say, so what are we going to do? And there you have to take a decision. And that's what it comes down to. And it could be the wrong decision, but that's what it is. So it's, for me, authenticity. It is, avoid micromanaging. That also means I have no hierarchy, really, only in that sense that at one point, if nobody knows how to proceed, I'll have to make a decision. That's where I see it. Now, this is for the academic career. This is for my daily work. With a society like WPA, it's totally different. There it is, we are an organization that has membership fees, but there's not much there in terms of resources. There are a few people that run the society. They have to be good custodians of the scarce funds that we have. And there it's actually a lot of putting your heart and soul in this, like everywhere. But here it's even more. And there, honestly, I do a lot of micromanaging because there's nobody there. It's the president, me, the president-elect, and then we have a secretary for sections, we have a secretary for finances, and we lost our secretary general, so I have assumed that role. We don't have a secretary for meetings anymore. So it's a few people that have to manage such a big society, and there actually it's really dedication. And you want to be voted in, and when I was voted in, I was secretary of sections, and I had 6 years of experience with the sections, and I just told people that's what I've done, that's what I want to do, and you can see what I've done, because I told them, look, I brought 300,000 euros research grants and so forth. That's what I've done. That's what I can do. I hope to do the same thing. And there you have to present. You have to present in a research in an organization like that. You have to show what you have done. You want people to vote for you, and then you basically promise, or you say, well, I will try to do the same thing again. I will be very open. I'll try to do this again. I don't know whether I can do it, but there it's about openness and sharing what you have done. So this is, but again, in an organization like that, it's much more managing these things myself. Organizing meetings, I have to do it hands-on because we're a small society. It sounds big, but we have funds that are limited. You have to run an office, 147 member societies in 123 countries. They all send emails. They all want something, which is great. We want you to ask us things. But I think these are the two things, and I'll stop here. Maybe now, Vinay, you want to give your, share your experience.
Thank you, Thomas. It's good to see everyone, and good to see Asta, our current president of the college. So I arrived at 1:00 last night. And I think the other Asta had told us some different topics to talk about. And I was to talk about ethics and patient confidentiality and a few other things. But just to set up the scene, what Thomas was talking about, a lot of people talk about leadership nowadays compared to when I finished my training in 2002. I hadn't even kind of heard the word, what leadership meant at that time. Now you go out and everybody talks about leadership, youth leadership, child leadership, leadership in professions. Everybody wants to be a leader, not realizing that all of them have different meanings to that thing. And Thomas quite nicely elaborated on that you could be in a position of leadership which is a paid position. So I'm the director of one of the mental health services in Australia, and they pay me to be in that position. And they hold me to account because they pay me to be in that position. And then, of course, we do work for the professional societies. So, for example, the leaders in The Indian Psychiatric Society here, or the Social Psychiatry, or the College of Psychiatrists in our college in UK, or WPA, almost all of that work is volunteer work. So you're doing that leadership, but it is volunteer work. And there's a lot of work, as Thomas said, with lot less support available to you compared to what you get in a paid job. So that's one thing I want to talk to people about. So my experience over a period of time, that leadership is something which is talked about a lot. It has different meanings to different people, and there are elements of it which are paid part of your job, and there are elements of it which are not paid part of your job. So you could be doing something but as part of a professional organization, and that's your volunteer work. You could be a member of a committee in Indian Psychiatric Society, and you could display leadership there, and that's your volunteer work. Or you could be working as a psychiatrist in a government college, or in whatever capacity where you are, and you can display leadership skills there as well. Okay, so those are two things. The other thing which I have learned over a period of time, like when I first started, I never anticipated that I'll be something sitting here. I didn't start with a view thinking that one day I will become the president of the College of Psychiatrists. I didn't even think of going to Australia. It just so happened. So what we don't realize is that things keep happening and opportunities come your pathway, and sometimes you just have to take those opportunities. And it's not always, one could say, like Novak Djokovic, who is a great tennis player, he knew from when he was age 4 or 5 that all he wanted to do was play tennis. And of course he did play tennis at the highest level. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who wanted to play tennis but didn't succeed there. And so the other element of this whole leadership business, which is not talked about a lot, is failure. Everybody just sees success. They see that, oh, you are the president of the college. They see that Thomas is the president-elect of the WPA, or you are in your whatever paid position. What they don't see is the failure. A little while ago, I was looking at how many jobs I had applied for over a period of 20 odd years, and in how many of them I was successful and I was not successful. And the number of jobs where I was not successful was higher than the jobs where I was successful. So there is that element as well, that you can think that this is what you want to do, but opportunities come along the way, and sometimes you have to take those opportunities when they come with you. And there will always be some of those rare situations where somebody says, this is what I want to do and this is what I want to achieve, and they might be able to achieve that. I'm not saying that it is not possible, but certainly for me, all I did was think about what I want to do in the next 2-3 years, and then kind of work towards that. Previously people used to talk about 5-6 years. Nowadays people say, well, if you can plan what you want to do in the next 2 to 3 years, that is kind of good enough, right? And so that can guide your, whatever professional work you are doing, or do you want to set up your private practice? If you're doing training, what will you do after you finish your training? Is a good thought. You said if you're doing training and you think that I'll be the president of the Indian Psychiatric Society, well, it's a good thought, but maybe it should be in the back of your mind. And so, or if you finished your training and if you're working as an assistant professor, and you might say, okay, I want to establish myself in a particular area of interest in research, or I want to publish a paper I want to do something. So that's a good thought. That's a good sort of planning. So I think those things are important, that, it means different things to different people. Certainly a lot of it is talked about compared to, it's not like as if leadership did not exist 20 years ago or 25 years ago. People just did what needed to be done without kind of naming it as leadership. Now we are teaching people what leadership is all about. In fact, my observation over a period of time is nowadays we are teaching a lot of common sense to people, whereas previously we didn't teach common sense to people. Now we are organizing sessions to teach people common sense. We write policies for common sense. Like I work in a healthcare organization where we have 700 policies. Now, out of all those 700 policies, vast majority of staff don't remember anything. But when it comes to providing good clinical care, they use their experience and their training, and they're going to provide good clinical care. And if they are not able to work out a problem, whether it is an ethical issue or whether it is a patient confidentiality issue or whatever, they know that they can get help from someone. So we write, and we've reached to a point where we've kind of de-skilled people from thinking. We're saying to people in healthcare that you come to work, but we don't want you to think. We want you to come, do the job we tell you to do in that shift, and then go home. And that's not what leadership is all about. We want to encourage people to be able to make that decision. And so that's one of the sad part of the whole leadership business. And exactly what Thomas was talking about, the whole micromanaging thing. That we're saying from the top that, okay, this is what you can do and this is what you cannot do. There are far too many rules nowadays. And everybody wants you to follow the rules. Very westernized concept. Rules were here as well, but it's a very westernized concept. Every time something goes wrong, they look at what could have happened and then they come out with a rule. Not even knowing that even if you created the rule, the thing might not have been prevented anyway. So we are now teaching leadership and we are telling things to people because there are lots of things we are teaching which came quite naturally previously to a lot of people. And I don't know whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but I think we have, there are papers written about it. When you read about it, of course, you become more aware of it. You are more consciously aware of leadership as an attribute and how you can contribute to the society. Whereas probably 20 years ago, leadership as an attribute was not in your conscious awareness. All you did is what you wanted to do. Now, I remember when I first started my training, my professor at Ranchi, he put me in a rehabilitation ward and he said to me, you are the medical officer in charge of this ward. And essentially what he meant was that I was in charge of literally everything, including cleanliness. So if the toilets were not clean, it was somehow my responsibility. I needed to make sure that the other staff who were working, that they worked together to make sure it was clean. And I didn't understand leadership at that time, but probably when I look back at that time, that was leadership in action, as in working together with a team. So what has happened over a period of time is that we've kind of fine-tuned some of those attributes, and then we say, okay, this is what you can learn about it, and we're learning earlier and earlier about it. And I think the key element is that how do you, when you learn about leadership, how do you put that into practice at wherever you are working, in whatever capacity you are working, because you have the ability to influence the outcomes for the people you are providing care to you, or you have the ability to influence outcomes in whatever capacity you are there in the society. Leadership in health is just one little part of it, because leadership in the rest of the society is also another part of it. So I think that they are my initial thoughts, but I think we should just have a conversation with people, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now questions from you guys, right? Maybe Asta, you want to moderate that?
Thank you for sharing all your experiences from being till being the leader, sir. Now, let's take a few questions from the audience. Who's anybody interested to ask?
One word is born leader. Pardon? Yeah, I am Dr. Gaurav Arora. I am from the central part of this country. I am a homeopath. I did my MBA from FMS New Delhi. Then did my psychology. So, being a management student and a medical student, my question is, do you believe in concept of born leader or can we train leader?
Born leader versus trained leader.
Yeah. It's like nature versus nurture. I think it's a mix. So of course, you a born leader versus a trained leader. I think that's what what Vinay just said, I think is important. There are a lot of things that we now put in curricula that maybe before we never were aware of, are just common sense things. So I think there are people who, we all know there are personality traits, and some personality traits are more conducive to working in a team, working with a team, leading a team. Yeah, I mean, if you are schizotypic, if you are narcissistic or so, I mean, maybe narcissistic may work. I don't know for a word, but if you are, withdrawn, or if you have problems with social anxiety, whatever. I mean, just speaking in our terms, then of course that may be hard, and you need to overcome these things through training. But I think there are some characteristics, if they are deeply ingrained in your personality, that might be problematic, and you cannot train away, like personality traits that might hinder you. I mean, that's we have all experienced that. Leader, but there are people who say, I don't even want to be a leader. No, I just want to be in the background. I like to be in a team, provide services and so forth, but I don't want to do leadership. So I think, yes, there are elements of it's basically a certain personality type that are conducive to leadership. Then there's definitely, nowadays, maybe there is a need, especially if you are too narcissistic or so, maybe it helps. But if you're smart enough, maybe then you should see, well, maybe I should take that course. Maybe I should learn something, how to manage my own problems here, and So I think it's a mix, like always. It's not either or. But I definitely think there are people who are not, who will also say, no, I'm not a born leader, and I don't want to be one.
See, the issue is that for our own convenience, we want to see things kind of black and white, isn't it? Yeah. We don't want to see the shades of gray. And there are lots of theories around leadership. Born leader and leader in a crisis, or leader in peaceful times. And if you read the history of several leaders around the world, you would find some of the leaders who were terrible during peaceful times were great leaders during war. Now, you don't want to create war in order to see their great leadership, isn't it? But of course, war happened, and they displayed great leadership. And I think, forget about war, during COVID we saw that. There were leaders who actually did very well during COVID because they know how to manage crisis in a slightly better way. Everyone has got some attributes or the other. We are all born with a purpose. Now I am speaking like a preacher. But we are all born with a purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? And sometimes it is finding that purpose. And many a times people can find that purpose, but vast majority of times I don't think we can actually truly find that purpose, because we are shaped by so many other experiences in our day-to-day lives when you are growing up. Resources available to you. Like we do know that people who are from financially disadvantaged background, they have more mental health problems and they access less mental health services. So in the same way, children who are born in poverty, they are less likely to be in those leadership positions. So I think there are elements of people which you could say this is innate for you, and there are elements which you can certainly learn, because you have to learn to be successful in the role you are. And I think very early on, when Thomas was talking about leadership in paid positions, as in healthcare organizations or research organization, and leadership in professional organization, which is volunteer, the type of skills required are actually quite different. And there are a lot of people who've been in both the situations, and we could say, well, they were successful. But when you kind of analyze it a bit further, you would probably find that some of them were more successful in one role compared to the other one. And so I think the challenge really is that if you are in that sort of position, how do you upskill yourself that you can do justice to the role you are in? And certainly we do that now. I encourage people to get mentorship. So I encourage psychiatrists early on in their career to get a mentorship from a senior psychiatrist, depending upon the area they want to work in. So if you want to do research, you want to find a mentor who's already doing research. If you're working in leadership positions, you want to find a mentor who can help you with that sort of situation. And again, there are people, and certainly I've faced that, where we've invested heavily in some of our psychiatrists to develop their leadership skills, because of course they're leading a group of people, a group of team, and we've invested in them, several days worth of leadership training and whatnot, and one of them comes back and tells me, this is not for me. And I'm like, I could say, well, we invested in you and whatnot, but I'm like, actually that itself is quite helpful, isn't it? That you've identified that this is not for me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in the front. As Thomas said, I want to be in the background, and I'm happy to do that thing in the background. Steve Wozniacki and Steve Jobs of Apple, one of them was doing something else, and the other was in the background, isn't it? So there is that element of being born and develop skills. But I think I still feel that even if leaders who are born, for them to really display their born skills, the time gap is far too long. And so I really don't subscribe to this born hypothesis, because so many things can go wrong by the time you reach to that point where you can display your born leadership skills. And actually, anyway, so much of your life has been influenced by what has happened around you. If you've seen poverty, if you haven't seen poverty, like I nowadays talk about children in Western world, and they're teaching them about gratefulness. And I tell them, well, how can you teach a child who's got everything gratefulness? How can you teach a person who about hunger who's never gone hungry? So I think being born with leadership, they're nice concepts in some ways, but I still, when you look into it further, what you would find is that even those people, their leadership attributes were shaped by the experiences they had. And I think that brings down to one of the key elements of leadership, which is having diverse experiences. If you have diverse experiences, then I think you can be a better person. I'm sure you would have heard, kuएं का मेंढक, you have heard, like frog in the well. So if you've been in that well, and if you're a frog in that well, you know that well very well, but you don't know what's happening outside. But once you get outside, then you know what is happening outside. And the mere fact that I trained in India and then I migrated to Australia and I worked there, and I have got connections with people like Thomas and many others, and I know about systems in other parts of the world, has enhanced my diversity about things and my leadership skills. And I think that's quite critical to it. How do you get different experiences? And nowadays with virtual stuff and everything, you can actually get those sort of experiences. And I think these, people talk about conferences in many ways. Many times people talk about conferences in bad ways, that doctors just get together, eat, talk to each other and whatnot. But there is an experiential element of attending conferences, that you actually, you'd come and then you talk to someone, and you might talk to someone and you might just take one idea from that person, and that might be it for the conference. Knowledge is in the textbooks. Everybody can read textbooks, nah? So that's the debate. I think the debate around born leader versus developed leader is more around that. Well, even the born person has to be raised in the right way for them to display their leadership.
Matters the most.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Preetiman Mishra. I'm a junior resident in psychiatry at AIIMS Bhubaneswar. I just took two quick questions for both of you, sir. One, a lot of time a leader is evaluated on the results. So are there some other metrics that we can use about the processes that they initiate, or any decisions we did not go right but were well intentioned at that point of time, evaluate a leader apart from the success? The second question is, a lot of time a leader would face situations where the majority viewpoint is not something he or she is convinced with. So at that point of time, should he or she stick their neck out and believe in what he or she believes, or try and take a decision which they might not be too comfortable with? Thank you, sir.
You want to go first? I want to go.
Yeah, let me just the first part. So, sort of, you're looking at so what kind of metric there is, right? So, well, success. Again, what is success for the president-elect of the WPA? So first of all, we have to define what success is. So, in the WPA, yes, it is maybe bringing in funds. Inspiring people to organize meetings like this. So I think that you can come up with some metrics and in any kind of leadership position, and then this would be your measure. Then also leadership is that you try to build, well, that's also like a commonplace, but maybe, try to build a new, generation of leaders. That's definitely in your paid position, where you train people. So in my academic world, that would be a metric would be how many people do you have that pursue a PhD, or, after that, or, are in a position then to take up a professorship or something like that. There are metrics, and actually universities nowadays, at least where I am, they list these things, and you are rewarded for the number of students you get to, like a PhD or something like that. So I think this is train new leaders, train new. So if you just do your own job, you have your team, and you abuse the team just by just using them for your own success, but not providing for the next generation, I think then you failed, and that would be one metric. But the second question was harder, so you take that.
Well, I think there are several frameworks about how do you assess success, right? Do you know how many startups succeed? Very few. Very few. So is that worth it? All those other startups, they're all failures. They shouldn't have started, right? No success. So I think you can define success in different ways, right? Like Muhammad Gauri, he attacked 17 times. 17th time he succeeded. What if he did not attack the 17th time? There are lots of examples, and I love history and other elements. Learn from what's around us. So I think success is defined. What we do is we define success quite narrowly. There are 360-degree assessment. So if you are a leader of a team, what does your team think about you? That can be a metric of success. You are providing clinical care to a group of patients. There could be metrics of success for that group of patients. How many of them are keeping well? How many of them are getting readmitted into hospital? So that be a metric of your success. So I think sometimes the challenge for us is to define what is the metric where you would want to say that this is successful or not successful. And that's not with a view to say that, okay, well, वो जुगाड़बाजी नहीं है कि यारे we haven't been successful here, so we need to find a different metric which will demonstrate that we are successful, right? But I think sometimes genuinely it is difficult to find a metric which will demonstrate that you are successful or not successful, right? Certain times things are very easy. You provide vaccination. So you say 85% population has to be vaccinated. That's a metric of success. You are the district officer, and then you say, well, let's say you're working in the district mental health program, and you say in your district mental health program, you want to make sure that 90% of the pregnant women are screened for depression. It's a success metric, and in your district it is 60%. And you take a trend over a period of time, and a trend over a period of time is 60, 70, 80, 90. Then that is successful, isn't it? Compared to 60, 60, 60, 60, that's different, right? Second question, I think, is actually quite pertinent. I think there are a lot more situations, especially in in crisis times when there is disagreement within the teams. How do you, so that's why what has happened is in many organizations, they have slowly started to develop rules. I was talking about rules. Decision frameworks they have developed. So they want to develop a decision framework that framework will be used to make certain decisions, right? Then the other thing which is there in many organizations is delegations policy, to say what decisions you can make and what decision needs to be escalated. Then there are boards in organizations at the highest level. So it's not, the decision does not rest with one individual. The decision rests with other individuals as well. Now, of course, that person can't go back to the board again and again. They do make their decisions. If something comes to them at that time, they need to make a decision at that very moment. But it is not uncommon to actually have situations where you have to make a decision where other people might not agree with it, right? Especially in this day and age where information travels very fast. Everybody can, if I said something to you very quickly, you'll just Google, isn't it? And then you will believe as if Google is the source of truth compared to what I said to you. And that will shape your thinking. And then you will say, well, you're wrong. So we see all that sort of stuff. So I think one of the key challenge for the leaders of today is to be able to deal with that sort of, whether you call it as, I shouldn't call false news, but interpretation based on limited information. There would be times when you will make a decision based on limited information, but I think you would want to get as much information as you can. And I think that's where when you are with a group of people, everyone has the same amount of information and then you make a decision. And lastly, a lot of people think that just because we don't agree with you means that we are disrespectful or whatever. That is not true. If we were to all do every time somebody tells us to do something, then it'll be chaos. And there is something called a strategy and vision. A lot of people talk about strategy and vision, and I want you to go and read about strategy and vision. And it takes a lot of time and energy and diverse thinking to truly understand what strategy and vision means. Like you can search, there are some videos of Steve Jobs on the internet where in 80s he was talking about a laptop which is small enough to be put in a little kind of bag. And that is what I call as vision and strategy. And he says that we don't have the technology right now, but in a few years' time we will have the technology and we would have reduced the size, and then in a few years' time we would have the technology to even make it smaller, and then it will cost it $1,000. He said that in 1980s when even internet was not there. So I think experience of those type of stuff sometimes helps you understand those things. And he would have faced, like he was kicked out of Apple, then he came back to Apple. And I'm telling you some rare stories, but I think many of these things do happen more frequently than otherwise. And I think one of the important things is, especially with community organizations, professional organizations, because the tenure of leaders in those organizations is actually quite small. 1 year, 2 year. Thomas has got a 3-year solution. We at the WPA, we had a session where all the presidents came together and they talked about how there was a bit of a handover from one president to the other, and they continued to carry the agenda of the previous president. And so I think that's another important lesson, that if we want to go forward, sometimes we have to carry other people with us. And so sometimes you have to put in effort to resolve those differences, either through knowledge or through information or through evidence. I talk about facts, evidence, facts and feelings. Feelings are there. Don't ignore the feelings, but basically talk about facts, use the facts and evidence to engage people. So I think that there are those situations you would definitely face. And I think as you continue to progress in your career, you would certainly see more and more of that. You would certainly see more and more of gray in life, than what you can see now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Bhavya. I'm a junior resident at IMH Amritsar. My question is, as Dr. Vinay sir said, that he was made in charge of a ward at CIP Ranchi, and he was responsible for everything that was related to, from the cleanliness to the patient management and everything. So at times there are cases when the staff won't work, or the people who are responsible for their jobs, they won't do that job, and that leads to frustration as a leader for you, because you'll be responsible for whatever is happening. So how do you deal with frustrations at that level when things aren't going the way that you planned, because of people who are supposed to, like, people who are part of your team who are supposed to undertake those jobs?
That's a very good question. I was conveniently ignorant of any leadership responsibilities when I was in that ward. So that certainly helped. Look, I think, as I said to you, I think what has happened over with information, lot of stuff has come. People say, this is my job, I don't want to do this, I'll only do my shift. And I think as a society, somehow as a society, we are demarcating what our responsibilities are. But the fact is, it relates to the question which was there earlier, that if there is a disagreement in terms of who does what, then you need to bring the team together, and you need to look at who has the explicit leadership of that team. And sometimes there are actually people who might not be in the stated leadership positions, but they actually do hold significant influence on other members of the team. And I think that's where, it starts to drain you. One of the things actually when people really don't talk about leadership is actually when things are going very well, things are wonderful. You take all the credit and everything is fine and you're the boss and whatnot. But when things start to go well, you have to take, those challenges as well. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, that when you have a team where the culture in the team is not very good, when there is some sort of infighting there, and people are saying, well, this is not my job or that is not my job, that starts to drain you. And so I think that's where sometimes you kind of look at the whole picture. Sometimes you might want to take help from other people above you or around you. That's where some of these sessions are helpful. That's where, having a mentor is helpful for you, who you can talk to and discuss that this is what I'm dealing with, and they can actually advise you what you should do. So there are a whole heap of things you can do to upskill yourself in order to address that situation, because I think every situation it is possible to address every situation. Sometimes it is that at the end, if there is somebody, you have to call out their bad behavior, you have to call out their bad behavior. But there's a lot more which can be done. I think leading and managing teams is a very specific focus, and I would encourage you to go and read a little bit about leading and managing teams. There are quite a few articles around leading and managing teams, and I would encourage you to read about leading and managing teams.
I know you have a few more questions, but there is also a similar session tomorrow by Dr. Subodh Dave and Dr. Asta Tomar. We'll be concluding the session now. We thank Thomas sir and Vinay sir for gracefully coming, traveling from all the places, like coming here.
Thank you.
We'll conclude the session now. Like we'll Felicity. Yep, thank you very much, sir. Before we conclude, let's all have a group picture after the felicitation is done.
The famous plate. Well, thank you. Wow, with the photo. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. Is this from Jaipur?
This is Blue Corner in Jaipur.
Jaipur, okay, wow. Yeah, wow. Okay.